Good early afternoon. We are live. We are live. I'm Andy Andrews. You've joined us on the Blue Plate Special here from beautiful downtown Orange Beach in the financial district of Orange Beach. That's where all our brokers are, and we're glad to have you here. We have a full studio audience, and what's happening? Okay.
Putting you a little more in the middle.
Well, you could tell me to move.
Yeah, I think the camera was a little too far.
This is what happens with live TV. Usually, Matt will just say, could you move like a hair to the left or a hair to the right or whatever? So I do whatever Matt says. When I'm home, I do whatever Polly says. When I'm here, I do whatever Matt says. But we're glad to have you. We're going to have a good discussion today. Have you guys been to see the escalator statue? Have you had your picture taken at the escalator statue? No, nobody has. Wow. Listen, when you visit here, there's a lot of things to do in Gulf Shores and Orange Beach, and we're here at the wharf, which is I guess kind of the largest shopping area in here. How about just states, Matt? Just states. So, but when you visit here, a lot of people don't. They say, "Hey, what do we do?" Well, you can go to Fort Morgan and see that Civil War fort. You can go to the beach. That's what most people do. You can fish, and there's some interesting things. A lot of people go on a Jones tour, with the Noticer, and they go to the places that the Noticer went, and then a lot of people will come here because the wharf is home not only of Sand Dollar Lifestyles, but it is home to two pretty famous works of art. One is the Marlin statues down here, done out of stainless steel, and the other is the escalator statues. And the escalator statues we have four of them. We have two Marlin statues, four escalator statues, and they look real. I mean, stainless steel is more an artist's rendition because it's made of stainless and woven stainless, and you wouldn't mistake that for a real Marlin. But the escalator statues, I mean, it's like photorealism. It's they're life size. They look absolutely real, and so a lot of people come and take their pictures on them when they're here. We have people from I wonder how many states. We got people from Pennsylvania. Where's people from Pennsylvania? All right. Now, are you anywhere near the? I guess if you're in Pennsylvania, you're near the Amish, but I was in Pennsylvania. Man, I'm gonna have to have some cough syrup, Matt. So, here. Wait. Well, okay. Here, just give it to me.
Put it in a koozie?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you guys know. I said I'm gonna get cough syrup, and so I have cough syrup. Ugh. Okay. So, I was in Pennsylvania, and this was before cell phones, before camera phones, but I had an experience in a Walmart there that I've always remembered, and I thought, I wish I could have gotten a picture of this because it was just the classic irony. I was in the checkout line at Walmart, and the little horses and cars and wagons that you can put a quarter in for a kid. A kid will sit there and the thing will do this, Well, there was one of those, a little car, and a young Amish man in his full garb, his beard and everything, had put his little girl in there, and she had her bonnet on and her little dress, and he'd put the quarter in, and so he was standing there next to her as that machine was doing, and she was driving, which I thought, what a great picture if you could get that, because they don't drive, and then I've always remembered that. So Minnesota, where are you? Minnesota. Hey, Minnesota. I guess you're glad to be down here. Oh my gosh. Talk about the Great White North. Kentucky. I saw Bonnie Nix earlier. I knew Bonnie Nix was from Kentucky. Bonnie, you know Jason Crabb? Okay. Jason Crabb is from Kentucky. And he's the Grammy Award-winning singer, kind of my little brother. Jason's won 2 Grammys, but 1 year. Now see, Jason, I'm going to tell you something. Jason is a Kentucky Wildcats fan for basketball, but he's very smart. And so he has been an Alabama fan for football. So that's pretty smart, you know. 1 year, Kentucky won the national championship in basketball. Alabama won the national championship in football, and Jason won a Grammy. I was like, dude, can you just buy me a lottery ticket? I mean, this is going on. Iowa, where's Iowa? Julie's from Iowa. Have y'all met Julie? Julie is from Iowa. We are from Iowa. Really, I always thought you people said Iowa. We do, but we don't want you to say it that way. What is that from? You don't know? It's from the Music Man. From the Music Man, yeah? Well, we got trouble right here in River City. That's from the Music Man. So it's one of the first things he does when he arrives to town. The people go, we are from Iowa. And he goes, really? I thought you said Iowa. That's on Broadway again. Hugh Jackman is playing the Music Man on Broadway. Missouri. Where's Missouri? Hey, Missouri, the show me state. I've got a buddy who lives in Reed Springs, right outside of Branson. You know, the first time I ever did Branson, I was in Branson with Kenny Rogers. And I was his opening act at one place. And, and it was the first time I'd ever gone to Branson. And Kenny told me, he said, that afternoon, he said, hey, I just want to give you a warning. There's a lot, it's like really old people in the audience. And I said, yeah, that's okay. I've done cruise ships. He said, yeah, but these are like really, really old. And I'm like, Kenny, I've done cruise ships. He goes, well, I don't think you're getting what I'm saying. And I said, no, I do. So later that night, when I walked out on stage for the first show, I came really, really close to embarrassing myself hugely. Because when I walked out, the first 2 rows of people were there with the oxygen tanks and the thing going up their nose and the wheelchairs. And my first thought was, can he put these people here? He's playing with me. And I almost went, ah! Yeah, but I'm just glad I didn't. But cruise ships, a lot of old people. I mean, you don't put a glass of water anywhere. They'll put their teeth in it every time. Okay, Missouri. Michigan. Where's Michigan? Michiganders. Hey, how are you? Where are you from? Point. Right there. Okay. All right, good. Did you know that people from Michigan do that? Because if you look at the map, Michigan is shaped like a hand. And so they're always able to do it. You're from there too? All right. Oh, okay. All right. Look at you guys. I'm sorry, I didn't even see you. But yeah, Michigan's shaped like a hand, so they're able to do that. When I found that out, I thought, do other states do that? You know, it's like people in California. I'm from Sacramento, right here, or people in Italy. We live in Rome. So I don't know. Michigan people said that some kids in their town were working on the heart mender in school. Working with the heart mender. Yeah, in school. Good. I'm so glad. A lot of schools use that, and if you have some teachers or kids that go to school, just Wisdom Harbor has an educational doc, and the curriculums for those books, for Traveler's Gift, for the Noticer, the Lost Choice, the Heart Meter, the curriculums are free and able to download to the members of Wisdom Harbor. And if you're not a member of Wisdom Harbor yet, come on, shame on you. I mean, this is cheap. This is cheap. An entire year's subscription to Wisdom Harbor for a whole family is $50-something. This is like half a tank of gas. And for an individual, it's $20-something. It's just like less than $3 a month for this. And so it's going into a lot of schools and businesses, and we're very excited about that. Wisconsin, where's Wisconsin? Hey, Wisconsin. You know, the coach at University of Wisconsin uses the Traveler's Gift. So the teams read it every year. And I've got a bunch of buddies up in Wisconsin. A bunch of buddies. Have you guys heard of Michael Perry? Michael Perry, the author? Shame on you guys. I can't believe, you know, Michael Perry is like famous in other states, but he lives in Wisconsin, and he's not famous in his own state, I guess. But I get that. I get that. I found out about Michael Perry. I was in Spring Green one time, and I went into this independent bookstore, and I was just looking around, and then this lady comes up to me and she says, "Would you please join us in the basement? There's a tornado that's been sighted 3 blocks away." So I was like, sure, you know, and I'm seeing people come in the door. I guess it was the only basement on the block. People were flying in the door. And so I ran, twirled around the stairwell and got it. But I also grabbed a Coca-Cola and a book off a table because I have a pathological fear of being bored. And I thought, man, if the rubble comes in and we're trapped down there, I'm going to have a book to read. And so, you know, after like 20 or 30 minutes down there with 30 or 40 people and a bunch of kids and a couple of babies and a cat, I said, well, if it was going to hit, it would have hit by now. I think I'm going to leave. So the lady who asked me to come down, I gave her like a $20 bill. And I said, hey, I got a book and I got a Coke and this should cover it. Well, I went back to the place I was staying. I just put the book down. And then when I was leaving a week later, I threw the book in the suitcase. And when I got home, I put it in the closet. And it was like months later that I picked that book up and started reading it. The name of it was Population 485. And the subtitle was Meeting Your Neighbors One Siren at a Time. And so I was 2 pages into this book and I was like, who is this? Well, this guy's brilliant. And, you know, I looked at this guy named Michael Perry, who at the time lived in New Auburn, Wisconsin, and he grew up on a dairy farm and got a nursing degree and worked as a cowboy out west and decided he wanted to write. And I read that book. That book was the New York Times bestseller, and it is worth your time. Population 485, Meeting Your Neighbors One Siren at a Time. It's the odd book that can make you laugh out loud and tear up. And the guy's just brilliant. But I looked on Amazon, and he's written 12 or 14, 15 books. And so I got them all. And I am a fan. I'm a fan. If you want to see Michael, we've had him twice as a guest on our podcast, The Professional Noticer. And if you're not getting The Professional Noticer, all you need to do is just go on andyandrews.com and put your email list or your email address in the VIP list, and we will send you The Professional Noticer every Tuesday morning. And so Michael has been a guest twice, and you can go in the archives and see that. But Michael Perry, he is funny. and he can write. So,
I was just looking. I think we've actually had Michael Perry on 3 times now.
didn't we have him have we had 3 times on the Professional Noticer, or did we have him once on the Blue Plate and twice on the Professional?
I'm seeing 3 professional noticers. We had Roughneck Grace in 2020, and then we had Hunkering at the beginning of last year,
Right.
and then Take 3 in October.
Wow, Michael Perry he's our leading
He
person.
is.
Because we haven't had many people on twice, but he's been on 3 times. Well, you know what? I was just thinking yesterday, I'm reading, he sent me an early book of one that's coming out January 19th.
Ooh.
And I was already thinking yesterday, man, I need to have him on a podcast for this. But everybody loves him. The numbers just like go explode when Michael Perry's on because he's funny. He's just about as normal a human being as you ever want to find. But you need to read Michael Perry. There's one book, or actually a couple of books of essays that he has, because he writes a thing for the big paper in Wisconsin called Roughneck Grace, and so but so occasionally he will publish a book of those essays for those of us who don't live in Wisconsin. But he wrote the best essay, the best article, whatever I've ever read on Elvis in my life. How many books how many articles have you read about Elvis? 1 million of them, and they all kind of pretty much the same thing. But he gets into detail about why that Elvis phenomenon happened, and you go, I never thought of that. That is absolutely right. So Michael is a thinker, and I think you have to be a thinker to be funny. Edwina English says hello from the Alamo State. Have a blessed day. Let me tell you, see, now this is the ADD, every state reminds me of a story, and so she said, Edwina said, hey, from the Alamo State, so I've already thought of a story to tell you there. After Hurricane Ivan, which was 17, 18 years ago, it totally messed up our house. We're having to get re-permitted to build stuff back and all like this. And so I was in Foley at the courthouse. And people had already told me, if you go see this lady, she's kind of mean, and she's hard to, she doesn't want to do anything for you. And so, all right. So I went in there just, so I walk in, I'm smiling. Hi, how are you doing? It's good to see you. Where are you originally from? Because nobody here, we're like California. Nobody was from here, and so I'm trying to talk, and she's just sitting there. It's like, oh my gosh. So she's writing something, and I look at the bookshelf right across from her desk. There is about this big, a paper mache duplicate of the Alamo. It made out of paper mache, and it was pretty amazing. And so I said, wow, the Alamo, that is amazing. Did one of your children do that? She was definitely a grandmother age, but I wasn't about to say, did one of your grandchildren, did one of your children do that? And you must have had your children so young. What are you, 20? What? I didn't say that, but I didn't want her to, I didn't want to just assume. But I said, did one of your children do that? And she said, she didn't even look up. And she said, no, the woman that had the office before me, when she left, she just left that thing there. So I said, wow, I guess what you're saying is that she didn't remember the Alamo. And she said, yeah. Don't you hate to waste a joke on somebody that, it's like, yeah. What was that? I guess she didn't remember that. Come on. That's what I wanted to say. Don't you get the joke? Dave Larder says, greetings from Phoenix. Excited to sign up after the show for Kevin's Just Jones. Yeah, Kevin Perkins with Life Skills Project. Kevin's doing Just Jones this time coming up. So if you guys have not signed up for a Life Skills Project, you definitely want to do that one. Kevin Perkins, my longtime best friend, he's actually in the books. But how about that, to have a facilitator who is in the book? Shelley Hess, hey, says hey to all the team. You're in New Zealand. Wow. Yeesh. Judy DeWitt, 36 degrees in Spokane. David Huco, you're here for the start, listening in later. Okay, well. Denny Kilpatrick says mix a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, a teaspoon of local honey, a touch of lemon in 4 ounces of water to drink it. And it'll help with the drainage that's causing your cough. Add peppermint if you need to in order to taste. But see, here's the thing. I ain't got any drainage. It's just like this dry cough. I'm just like hacking. I mean, I noticed you didn't put any liquor in that recipe, because I could have done without the honey and the, yeah. It's just like have you ever seen the recipe for cooking crow? I mean, people go on crow shoots, and there is actually a recipe for crow. And what you do is you take a cedar shake, the raw cedar that hadn't got any shellac on it or anything, it has the natural aroma, and take a cedar block, a cedar shake, and you breast out the crow, and so you brush the crow with butter, salt, lemon, a little garlic, and you put it in the oven at 300 degrees for literally only 40 minutes. And then you pull it out, let it sit for 5 minutes, and you throw the crow away and eat the cedar block. So it's recipe for crow. Dina Kabasha says add some Fireball. Okay, today, we've been going for like 20 something minutes, and we haven't really talked about anything.
Yeah, it's been interesting so far.
Are y'all okay? Y'all okay? Yeah, I mean, you're not leaving on me, are you? All right. Today, here's what I wanted. Let me just tell you this before I get into our topic for today. The other day, on the Wisdom Harbor version of the Blue Plate Special, on Tuesdays, we open it up. It goes to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wisdomharbor.com. But then on Thursday, it's only the members of wisdomharbor.com that watch. And so we wanted to tell everybody that on Thursday we were doing a show with poems. And we're going to start to write a poem. And so we wrote like half a poem. And we said, okay, so you can take it and kind of finish it if you want to. And then one day we'll read what everybody finishes. So we wanted to include you guys on this. And hopefully next Tuesday, when everybody's on, we will read your entries. Okay? But here is the first part of the poem so that you have this. You can write it down and work with it. But this is the first part of the poem. She was a Yankee girl, didn't like the cold, so she headed south as soon as she got old enough to leave. She made Jacksonville by noon the next day. By sunset, the girl had found a place to stay. She was just gearing up to get hired someplace. She had tricks up her sleeve, and one was an ace. By 8:35, she was headed to the beach, hit A1A, and could hear her daddy preach in her head. She shook it off, geared down, and stopped in Ponte Vedra. There, a gas station attendant said, "It sure is good to see you." And that's where we stopped. And so we would like to invite you to write the rest of it. Matt will post it in the chat so you can copy and paste it and work on it. And so next Tuesday, we will read your entries. And maybe let's have a prize. You want to have a prize?
Of course.
Should it be grand or just a regular prize?
Yeah, just a regular one.
Okay. All right, there won't be a grand prize, but it will be a prize. All right, so we'll see. So today, I wanted to talk about something that I think about all the time. And this could be fun. This could help you. But before I talk about it, let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask the studio audience a question. How many of you guys out there have bad doctors? Anybody have a bad doctor? I mean, the doctor that you have chosen to take care of your family, that you go back to again and again, that doctor is definitely below average in their skills and knowledge of medicine. Anybody? Okay. All right. So just remember that reaction. Today, I want to talk about perspective. You know, every time I get around Jones, that comes up. And every time I write a book, that seems to be a part of it. A conversation about perspective seems to be a part of it. And so when I'm working, I have a company called creatingmeasurableresults.com. And when I'm working with clients on there, one of the things that I make sure that they're fundamentally aware of is perspective. So I talk about this a lot. I think about it a lot. And I thought maybe it would help some people in crazy times we're going through. Maybe it would help some people to talk about this on the Blue Plate. And so to get into it, this is probably the easiest way to get into it. If I asked you what perspective was, what would you say? How would you define perspective? Now, I'm going to just tell you what I hear most times. When I ask that question, what is perspective? Most people say, well, by the way, what is the N on your hat? What is that? Is it Nebraska? No? Northwestern. I can't hear him. I can't hear him. You know, Nebraska has an N on their helmets. Yeah, you know what the N stands for on Nebraska's helmet? Knowledge. Yeah. Okay, so perspective. Getting serious again. When I ask people, how do you define perspective? What is perspective to you? Most people say it's the way you see something. You know, it's the way you see it. Do you see the glass half full or the glass half empty? It's the way you see it. And I understand why they define it that way. But in reality, that definition, while I understand it, it's not accurate, and it doesn't empower us. If we understand the reality of the word perspective, there is a power in it. Okay, because here's the thing. If you look at, is this? I wonder if I can tear this off. I can't. Okay. If you look at that and say, okay, my perspective is how I see that, whether it's half full or half empty. Okay, see, here's the thing. It's neither half full or half empty. It is. You know that cliche, it is what it is. That's what I mean, that water line is neither half full or half empty. And so it turns out perspective is not how you see a thing, it's how you choose to see a thing. Because the water line is what it is. And you're choosing how you see it, leads your life down one path or another. And when you think about it, you see, you think of glass half empty people and glass half full people, and you think about how each of them act, and when you see something, when something happens to everybody, like in this area, once it was an oil spill, it was a hurricane, but you see, there will be people that go, "Oh, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. This is the worst thing that could have ever happened." Okay, so that is a glass half empty statement, and when somebody makes that choice to see something as the worst thing that could have possibly happened, what are their actions that support that choice? They're choosing to think that. So what are their actions? What do they do? Well, usually they kind of sit down, they stew, they think about it a lot, they're kind of depressed, and of course, half empty people, those people, they we don't want to hire glass half empty people. We don't want to promote glass half empty people. You don't want to take a glass half empty person and put them in a leadership position, right? And glass half empty people, when you think about it, you don't really want to be around them because they're a drag. And so when you got an opportunity to share, if opportunities come from people, and so if somebody is kind of alone and whining and complaining, there's not a lot of people around them, and so they get fewer opportunities. And you can see how that pathway leads to, at some point, they kind of look up and go, "Yeah, well, see, it was the worst thing that could ever happen. See where I am? That's the worst thing that could have ever happened, and here I am." I mean, they kind of chose that path. But you see, some other people go, "You know what? I wouldn't have probably chosen this, but how many times have we said, gosh, if it weren't for that, we'd have never done this." And so I'm just going to think, hey, this could be, I would have never chosen it, but who knows? It could be the best thing that ever happened. Okay, so somebody who chooses that, what pathway do they go down? They go down a pathway of curiosity. This could be the best thing ever happened. I don't know how, but well, maybe we can see something. And so they're happier. And of course, how do we deal with glass half full people? Glass half full people, those are the people we want to hire. I mean, we're looking for people who are glass half full to hire. Those are the people we want to promote. You got a leadership position, you want a glass half full person. And so this person experiences this, and of course, a person like that, especially in crazy times, people flock around them. They don't want to be around a glass half full. They just don't want to be around glass half empty, but they do want to be around glass half full people. And so there's more people around them. Well, since opportunities come from people, and there's more people around them, it just kind of stands to reason that when there is an opportunity to be shared, they're going to hear about it. And then somewhere down the road, they look up and go, "Wow, look at all this. I mean, this is amazing. What has happened? I mean, we would have never chosen that, but look at what's happening now. It would have never happened if it hadn't been for that." And wow, and it really did turn out to be the best thing that could have ever happened. All right, so I want to give you a couple of examples, a couple of real life examples, but I want to also talk to you about some things that we deal with in making those choices. There is, and also I want to make a delineation. There is a difference in perception and perspective. Perception and perspective are two totally different things. Your perception, how you perceive something, has to do with the present. That has to do with how you are perceived. That has to do with now, what you're seeing. Perception has to do with what is. But perspective has to do with how how you choose to categorize what is as you move into the future. You know, I mean, you look and go, I perceive that there has been an oil spill. I don't know how many of you remember that, but that was like a couple or 3 years after Hurricane Ivan. And the big Deepwater Horizon well blew out in the Gulf and sent oil all over the Gulf and on the beaches. And I mean, there, at that point, there were people who had businesses here who just locked the door, dropped the key off at the bank, and moved to Birmingham. I mean, there were people who left because, you know, the rumor or the word was this is going to take a generation to clean up. And there are people 50 years old going, I ain't got a generation. You know, I'm not going to live here for this. And so there were a lot of people who literally left, who said, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. Now, back to that, you know, what we said about perception and perspective. Perspective is the only thing that I have ever found in my research and thinking. Perspective is the only thing I've ever found that can dramatically change the results without changing a single fact. Not a single fact has to change, but perspective applied to a situation can dramatically veer the results this way or this way. And so perspective is the only thing that can dramatically change results without changing a single fact. I think probably the oil spill is a great example of that. Because there were people who said, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. You know, my boys were in elementary school, and, you know, this is a kind of a fishing community. This is a community that has charter boats are a major deal here, major industry here. And most of the charter boat captains, they don't, I mean, the boats are theirs, but they're not paid off. It's like a house, you know, they're making payments. They're making monthly payments on these boats. And all of a sudden, when the oil spill happened, they can't fish. I mean, you know, the government is not allowing people on the beach. The National Guard's keeping people off the beach. And so people were piling down here, but the guys couldn't fish. Nobody could go on the beach. And so there were a lot of them who looked at this and and literally or figuratively walked away. My boys were in elementary school, and they went to school with a little girl whose dad was a charter boat captain who climbed up into his boat and killed himself during that time. And so that really was the worst thing that could have ever happened for that family. And then there was a couple of other charter boat guys. One of them was a guy named Chris Eberly. And they're looking and thinking, because I always say, I say to people in situations like this, I say, you got to remember you're never lacking money, you're never lacking time, you're never lacking leadership. Because that's the default everybody makes. Well, if we had more money, we could, you know, well, if we had more time, but look at the time we got left on the calendar and the time, I mean, there's no way we can, or, well, if we had the right leadership in here, we could, but in situations like that, I always tell myself, I have to remember, I am not lacking money. I'm not lacking time. I'm not lacking leadership. Those may be symptoms. They may grab my attention, but I got to get underneath. I got to get to the bottom of the pool. I got to get to the depth of this problem. So I'm not lacking time. I'm not lacking money. Not lacking leadership. I'm only lacking one thing, an idea. One idea. One idea can change everything. One idea. We've all seen one idea make billions of dollars. We've seen one idea save millions of lives, and one idea will move you from where you are to where you want to be. So one idea, lacking one idea. Now, what is the idea? I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know. How do you find an idea? I always think that finding an idea is a process of movement and adrenaline. You know, I think you have to be moving. I think you have to be moving around, get some adrenaline going. But I also believe that a part of this is the quality of our answers can only be determined by the quality of our questions. You ask good questions, you get good answers. You ask bad questions, you're going to get bad answers. And I'm talking about not questions necessarily to somebody else, but questions to ourselves. You know this subconscious thing we say, you know, that when we look at something and go, why did this have to happen? Well, what does your subconscious do with that? You know, oh, this is the worst thing that could have ever happened. And your subconscious is going, yeah, it is. It is. It doesn't get much worse than this. I mean, you think about just little everyday things that we question ourselves. Well, you know, why am I so fat? Well, your subconscious jump on that. Well, you don't have any discipline. Your mother was fat. And so you know you're fat and you're always going to be fat. So why are you so worried about it? You don't need to worry about that. I mean, that's the subconscious. But we can, if the quality of our answers is determined by the quality of our questions, we can ask a better question and get the subconscious working on that answer. And like to the why am I so fat, which is a horrible question. A better question would be, how can I regain the shape I had when I was whatever age and have fun doing it and not be hungry all the time? Okay, so don't let your subconscious work on that. But that's a good question. And so at this time with the oil spill, one perspective was in our face. I mean, it was in our face because people were, you know, they were choosing the perspective that this was the worst thing that could happen. This is going to take generations to clean up. This is, you know, it doesn't matter what BP pays. The time is lost. It was crazy. But then, so there were some other charter boat guys that I'm saying, hey, you're not lacking time, you're not lacking money, you're not lacking leadership. You're just, you know, you're not lacking the government bailing you out. You're just lacking an idea, just an idea. And so they thought, well, you know, people are coming down here and they're wanting to see the oil. That's why they're coming down here. They're wanting to see the disaster. I mean, these are the same people who watch NASCAR and professional bull riding. You know, they drove down to see the oil. And these are the people that watch NASCAR and pro bull riding. I mean, you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but if they do get hurt, you don't want to miss it. I mean, that right? And so it's like people like to see a wreck. Okay, let's go down and see the oil. Let's go see. After the hurricane, people just flood down here. Like, look at the damage. Look at the damage. So they're thinking, okay, people are coming down here, but the National Guard is keeping them off the beach. They're coming down to see oil and they can't see it. And so what Chris and a few guys did, they said, we are limited with our license to how many people we can fish. But we're not limited to how many people we can ride around in our boats. As long as we have the number of life jackets. And so they said, why don't we do environmental tours? So Chris started charging $20 a head. Now, you can only fish 6 people, but by God, he'd put 40 people on that boat. And he'd jam them on there. He had this, microphone thing. And he'd pull out of the marina, the boatload people, and say, welcome to the Southern Rose Environmental Tour. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will look to your right, you'll see there is oil there. Over on the left, if you'll look to your left quickly, you'll see oil. And now up ahead, we are coming up on some oil. I mean, he basically did that for like an hour and a half. And people just loved it. They just loved it. And so it didn't take a generation to clean up. It didn't. And then as things are kind of coming back to normal, well, now it's like it's time to go fishing again. But a lot of these guys were like, we're making more money doing this. And we didn't have the fuel costs, and we're not having to call it off when the waves are too great, or we're not having to take people back in because they're sick. This is kind of an easy life. I mean, wonder if we could keep doing this. But the problem was there wasn't any more oil. The oil had been cleaned up. But they started, they're just thinking, all you're lacking is an idea. And they said, people would go nuts when they saw dolphins. They would go nuts when they saw dolphins. So why don't we just keep it up? We'll call it a dolphin tour. Pretty much always around, we'll call it a dolphin tour. And so they started piling people on. That's how these dolphin tours started. And Chris, with the Southern Rose, there were a couple of summers there that his son, Chris would advertise that if you don't see a dolphin, you don't have to pay. If we don't find dolphins, you don't have to pay. Well, an hour before Chris would leave the dock, he would send his 12-year-old out in a skiff, a little outboard motor on the back and a walkie-talkie, and Chris's son would go, Dad, the dolphins are down around Bear Point. Chris would go, all right, thank you. And he'd pay the kid. That was the kid's job, to find the dolphins. And then Chris would take out of the marina right to Bear Point. There's the dolphins. Wow, we get paid. And it it was amazing. But this was a direct result of choosing a perspective. It didn't change any of the facts. The oil was still there. The oil was still on the beach. It didn't change a single fact for either group. And yet, in one perspective, is this the worst thing that could have ever happened? And that ultimately led to it being the worst thing that could have happened. And then other people saying, well, how many times have we had things happen that we didn't know that was going to happen, but then here we go. And so it's even hurricanes. You will hear people say, well, it's the worst thing that could happen to all of us. Well, really not to all of us. If you had a Home Depot stock, you weren't too sorry. We had friends who were roofers. They made more money in a year than they would have made in 10 years. Roofing houses. And so it's not the worst thing that happened to everybody, but you're looking for an idea. By the way, if you're ever looking for an idea and you think there's no more ideas, don't ever tell me that. Don't ever come up to me and go, we heard you say that all you needed was an idea. And we even formed a committee for ideas. And all the ideas had been taken. They've all been taken and there are no more ideas. I mean, don't do that to me. I hadn't slapped anybody yet, but I've come close. If you ever get to thinking that all the ideas have been taken, just remember, we figured out how to put people on the moon before anybody thought to put wheels on luggage. So there's plenty of ideas. The perspective about the doctors. It's funny to me. I've asked that question of a lot of people. How many of you have bad doctors? And you see a couple of people kind of going, and then I'll define it. Now think about this. How many of you, the doctor that you have chosen to take care of your family, that you go to over and over again, that doctor is definitely below average in their knowledge of medicine and their skills of practicing medicine? How many of you have bad doctors? And then at that point, nobody ever raises their hand. They just don't raise their hand. But you know that's impossible, right? I mean, just the statistical average says that there is a point right there in the middle that the above average doctors are here and the below average doctors are here. There's currently 1.1 something million licensed physicians in America. And exactly half of them are below average in their knowledge of medicine and their skills of practicing medicine. And then if you took that 50% that is below average, and you took the bottom 10% of that, the bottom 10%, that would still leave 2,000 doctors for each of 50 states in America, 2,000 doctors in our states that are the bottom 10%. And you know what we call them? Doctor. I mean, we wait for them in their waiting rooms just like we wait for them. I mean, this became apparent to me, and I fell off a stage 8 or 9 years ago, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and so I was going to have surgery, and so I went to 7 different neurosurgeons who looked at the same MRI and held my neck in their hand. 7 of them. And from those 7 neurosurgeons, I got everything from we're going to have to replace 2 discs with artificial discs. There's not enough to even wire back together. And so we're going to have to implant artificial discs. I got everything from that to on this end. If there was something to do surgery on, I'd do surgery, but there's just nothing showing it. I think maybe you have a pinched nerve, but it's nothing showing. Same MRIs, same neck, same medical license, same specialty. So sometimes perspective imposes itself on us. But if you look at how perspective can help, you realize that it is a choice. You choose how you think. You choose how you think. We all know we can make our own choices, and we tell kids, make good choices, make good choices. But it's rare that people get into how choices are made. And it is our thinking. Our thinking. If you ever doubt that, you got to remember every choice you've ever made in your life, every choice you'll ever make in your life, is totally determined by what you think and how long you think about it and how you think about it and what you decide you can't be thinking about right now, so it doesn't distract you from thinking about what you got to think about so that you can decide. It's our thinking. Everything is our thinking. And so it is curious to me, one of the greatest paradoxes is that our thinking informs our choices, but we can choose how we think. You can choose how you think. And if you wonder about that, consider the promptings you have for the things you think. Your promptings are usually somebody or something, and the something is divided into what you watch, what you read, or what you hear. And so you can choose how you think because you can choose what you watch. You can choose what you will read. You can choose what you'll listen to. You can choose the people you hang around. And maybe it's more, maybe there is more power to understand that you can choose how you think because you can choose what you will not watch. You can choose what you will not listen to. You can choose what you will not read and who you will not be around. It's your thinking. You know, there was a time, I've got this in one of my books. I think it's in the bottom of the pool. I think it's in the bottom of the pool. But there was a time when they were still going through the courts about pornography. And you know, they were arguing about if pornography can be put how close to a school, how close to a church, where in a town, how many in a town. And there was still, that was still all going through the courts. And so one of those cases had made it to the Supreme Court. And I've got it detailed in the book. I've got the dates and the people who said what. But before that case opened, the attorneys that were going to argue both sides before the Supreme Court went to the judges and they said, before we argue this, you have to define pornography. I mean, you got to define it. I mean, how are we going to determine where it goes and if we don't know exactly what it is? And so we need you to define it. And the court recessed for close to 48 hours. 48 hours for these Supreme Court justices to figure out how to define pornography. And when they opened the court back up, the spokesperson for the Supreme Court, I guess the head guy Supreme, the head Supreme, Diana Ross, would the head guys came and said, and this is, I'm telling you the exact thing. He said, we're not sure how to define pornography, but we know it when we see it. "48 hours, 7 Supreme Court justices. That's the best you can come up with? I know it when I see it? Well, I'll tell you this. I can define pornography for you right now better than a Supreme Court justice. And you'll agree with it. It'll make sense to you, and you won't ever forget it. Defining pornography. Let's say that on one hand you have the centerfold of a magazine, and on the other hand you have Venus de Milo. All right, both are depictions of a nude female body. You got a centerfold picture and you got Venus de Milo. Why is one of them considered pornography and the other is considered art? The answer is very simple. It's because of what you think when you look at it. Yes, you're thinking. Your thinking informs your choices, but you can choose what you think. You can choose what you think. I guess the last part of this, the last thing I would like to say, is we have the economy is having, we're having an economic swing, an economic downturn. Have they announced? Are we in a recession yet? Have they announced a recession?
I don't know for certain or not.
Have they announced one? And I don't even know well, I do know how they choose it, but I don't know what number. It's when the gross national product decreases 2 quarters in a row. They officially call a recession. But there's some egghead somewhere that is running the numbers, and they're saying, we're in a recession. Because for months you're hearing on the news, it looks like America is headed for, this could be a worldwide recession. As, the economic indicators are, and so, you got people going, and then at some point they call it and they say we're in one, or they don't call it. There, a couple of things that would give you perspective about an economic downturn or a recession. One piece of perspective is that it is incredibly normal to have a recession. In fact, America is always either in a recession, coming out of a recession, or headed into a recession. Always. I'm not incredibly old, but I'm a baby boomer, and at my age, I have experienced 11 recessions in my lifetime. 11. In fact, did you know that 2020, America set a record? Because when 2020 rang in, it was the first decade since the Great Depression that we had not had a recession. The first decade we've had one. There's been 13 recessions since the Great Depression. You know how many recessions there's been since the country was founded? 48. 48. And a recession, an economic downturn, whatever you want to call it, it's important to remember that it is a dot on a graph. The bad doctor thing, it's a dot on a graph. There is a midpoint. And a recession, an economic downturn, it's a dot on the graph. It means we know what the news says. We know what we hear with the news. Okay? But a dot on the graph means that are there people that are having a hard time, or their business pretty bad? Yeah, there are. But because it's a dot on the graph, are there people who are not having a hard time and their businesses are doing pretty good? Yeah. So in a recession or an economic downturn, are there businesses that are going under? Yeah. Are there businesses doing better than they've ever done, ever? Yeah. You just don't hear about them. But that's the nature of a graph. It's a dot on a graph. It splits the middle. In the Great Depression, if you go down here to Orange Beach High School, and if the history classes are studying the Depression, you can bet they're studying the same things we studied. What happened during the Great Depression? Tell me about the Great Depression. People were jumping out of windows on Wall Street. There are bread lines, unemployment 25%. I mean, that's what you learn. And that's what you think. And what nobody ever reports is that on the other side of the graph, there were more families who made fortunes during the Great Depression that have lasted until now than any other time in Western civilization. You know, Chrysler went into the Depression with a 9% market share. They came out of the Great Depression with a 34% market share and had passed Ford. Publix started during the Great Depression. Walt Disney started during the Great Depression. Why are people so scared of a recession? I think for years we have been taught to only look at one side of the graph. I think there's always something you can do. There's always an idea. What value can you add for other people? How valuable can you be for other people? If you can figure out your value, you'll never lack money. You'll never lack something to do. But as we close today, I will just say that let's see each other Thursday. Those of you who are not currently members of Wisdom Harbor, please join between now and Thursday, wisdomharbor.com, and it's cheap, okay? And join us Thursday, and then next Tuesday we'll do the finish of the poem thing, and but between now and then, explore perspective in your life. Explore how you look at things. Explore how you see things. Can you choose to be a glass half full person? Yes, you can. And so until we see each other again, let's stay on the upside of the graph, okay? Bye-bye.